Morning, guys. I think while we wait for Clive, let's just jump into some introductions. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. My name is Kishara Naidu. I'm actually work closely with Zach, who was a previous speaker in Nedbank Venture Capital. Will you please introduce yourself to the audience today?
Thanks, Kishara. Hi guys, I'm Will Harris, CEO of GMaven. We've been around for 10 years. We focus exclusively on commercial property. We allow commercial property businesses to store their data because data is all the commercial property runs on. And then we provide tools that automate processes for these businesses to be way more efficient. We're fortunate to service South Africa's top brokerages and consultancies and South Africa's most innovative property funds. And that's, as I said, all in the commercial property space, very much a B2B play. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks for that, Will. Crispin, can you please tell us a bit more about Property Fox and about yourself as well?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for having us. Property Fox has been active for about 3.5 years, and we were a very, very young startup. It was just two of us that kicked off with 2 laptops, and the big dream was to be able to create a solution for some of the issues that we were seeing in the residential real estate landscape. These were kinds of issues like high pricing for selling real estate. There was a big lack of transparency and lack of access to data. And so we set about trying to put together a business where we could try and solve as many of those solutions as possible. I think 3.5 years in, we're still going, which I will take as a great victory as a startup, and I think we continue to grow. It's been an incredible journey of learning and thinking we knew what we were doing, and then realizing we never did, and then we realized we needed to learn more. But it's been an incredible journey, and it's been really fun to be able to, well, difficult, but really fun to be able to navigate the South African residential real estate landscape, which, retrospectively now I look back on, and it's been pretty in public listed companies, it's pretty closed, and it's been really fun to navigate under the bonnet, which is great. So thanks very much for having me, and look forward to chatting about the topics today.
Awesome, great. So I'm going to pose my first question today while Clive is just going to join shortly, and then he can introduce himself. Okay, so the first question is, starting a PropTech in South Africa, what are the do's and don'ts, hard lessons learned, and how would what is the best advice that you can give entrepreneurs tuning in today to get around these, hurdles that you two have faced so far?
Crispin, you want to go first?
Let me start at the very beginning with us. I think probably it's quite cliched, but I think the best learning or best bit of advice I can give is just to start. It sounds simple, but it's often the most difficult thing. And we probably prepared for about 6 months to a year for the business before we actually opened its virtual doors. And even when we opened the doors, there were things that weren't ready, and there were systems that hadn't been sufficiently tested. And we could have probably sat around for another 6 months to a year perfecting those and trying to refine those, and it would have been a big mistake. And I'll never forget when we concluded our first residential sale. It was a house that we sold in Pretoria, and we were very small, and we were so excited that this has happened. We'd managed to acquire a client, we'd managed to list the home, we'd managed to make the client meet a purchaser and sell this home. And as we got to this point, we realized we actually didn't even have an offer to purchase document to be able to conclude this deal legally. And that was just an example of how much there is to do, how much there is to perfect over time. But even though we got to that point, we managed to survive and get it together. And I think that's probably the first bit of, the first biggest learning I learned, which is just to get going, and it's going to work out.
Sure. Thanks, Crispin. Guys, I think for me to build on what Crispin said, our challenge is that we live in a B2B world. So our customers, the enterprise customer, they're way less forgiving than a consumer. B2B, business, B2C, business to consumer. So although there's a strong case to be made for getting out there and building a product, and the Silicon Valley mantra is you need to be embarrassed about the first product that you push out there. The challenge in the enterprise space is customers are a lot less forgiving. The other challenge is that in our world, we're very much building a railway. And if you think about it, a railway from New York to a railway arriving at, say, Los Angeles, the guys in Los Angeles are waiting on the station and they're going, where's the product? And it's only once that you've covered the 2,000 miles from point A to point B that actually people can use something. So it's a slightly different, more complicated world when you're looking at the B2B space. And that's why it's quite early it's quite important you figure out quite early which space you're going to be playing in. Another really useful point here is the concept of vitamins versus painkillers. It's quite a popular metaphor for a good reason. When you start off, you've got so many things you can build. What really should you be focusing your time and energy on building on? Hi, Clive. We're just walking through, Kashira just asked the question, what are the do's and don'ts and for starting a PropTech and the lessons learned and how to navigate around this. And Crispin started off and I'm just running through some do's. So when you've got so many things to build, you really got to be so disciplined that you avoid building painkillers, that you avoid building vitamins, which are nice to have, as opposed to putting very scarce resources on things that are critically needed, which is your painkillers. Another non-negotiable as a to-do is do not start unless you, specifically in the world of PropTech, unless you've got deep levels of domain IP. Property and commercial property in particular will punish you if you're trying to learn as you're going. So you want to have strong domain IP, you want to ideally have a sales or business co-founder, and you want to have a tech co-founder. Because this is a PropTech solution, it's quite difficult if people are looking to outsource their work or pay third parties. The guys don't have skin in the game, and it can cause challenges for you. And then I think the final one is this is such an expensive space to be playing in. Crispin did it amazingly well to get runs on the board fairly early, but you kind of want to make sure when we got grant funding initially that the funders, which is the IDC, spoke to us about the rule of pi. And we're like, what's this rule of pi thing? And they said, take your time, take your money, and take the complexity and multiply everything by 3. And we like sort of poo-pooed the guys and like, we'll get our thing right. This is tech, it's slightly different. They were so right. In fact, they were more right. It's probably the rule of pi times 2. So just whatever your budgets or sums that you've done are, just like make use of the fact it's probably going to be a whole bunch more expensive and a whole bunch harder than you thought. Over to you, Clive.
Awesome, Clive.
What is the question, Kashira? Sorry, just repeat.
So maybe before the question, if you can just introduce yourself to the audience and also tell us more about Kalon. Then I'll give.
We're not live, are we?
We are.
We are live. Sorry, my apologies. And apologies about the delay. I got my links all messed up. So my name is Clive Butko. My background is a computer science applied maths degree. I then joined Accenture, where I worked for 28 years, and I eventually was the CEO of the company, built a 4 billion rand company, and had the real privilege of working all over the world, building tech companies. So even in the old days where it cost an absolute fortune to build a tech company, in the days of building hardware and minimal software to the days of building software. So I spent time in Silicon Valley and many other parts of the world, and I've invested, I've been an entrepreneur, I've been on the other side of investments, and it's probably close to 100 businesses I've been involved in actually building. So I've got all the scars, I've got the playbooks, I know what does and what doesn't work, even though there's still a long journey ahead. It's a journey, it's not a destination. And when I retired 8 years ago, I formed Kalon Venture Partners, and Kalon Venture Partners is a Section 12J venture capital company, and we focus exclusively on disruptive digital innovation-led entrepreneurs. So we've got 8 investments. We're actually closing our 8th investment today. We've got 2 more in the pipeline, and all of them really are very, very innovative, disrupting the market, very, very clear and unique go-to-market strategies. Fortunately for us, except for one, counter-COVID, or we've actually been COVID beneficiaries. So my experience really is building tech companies. Our company is investing in building tech companies. And we're a very high-touch venture capital company. So we invest, we get very, very involved in sales, marketing, product development, mentorship, hiring human capital, opening up doors, using our networks all over the world, helping companies raise capital. So everything a VC, what I learned in Silicon Valley, everything a VC in Silicon Valley does, we basically do. We do have one PropTech company in our portfolio called Flow. It's a remarkable bunch of founders. They built Papa Media, which is the first Facebook partner on the African continent, or the only Facebook partner. They sold it for a few $100 million and started this company about 2 years ago. Company is very interesting. It uses the Discovery sort of loyalty, behavioral economics to reward tenants for good behavior and actually pays the tenants a reduction on their rental if they behave well. They clean their house, they do this, they do that, etc., etc. And at the same time, we go to the marketplace to sell value-added services, whether it's selling Netflix or it's selling whatever the value-added service might be that a good tenant needs to have. We've got about 100,000 tenants on the platform, and so far so good. We're really starting to get product market fit and growing at a very rapid rate through some of the innovative technologies the team have come up with. So yeah, that's me at a helicopter level.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Clive. So you touched on the question, which was, so you've been involved in all these different companies. So what is the hard lessons learned? Like, if you had to give an entrepreneur advice today, what is the most valuable advice that you could give them in order for them not to make the same mistakes that you often see in companies?
Yeah, I think the number one reason, I've got probably 5 reasons why there's many reasons why our business fails. But I mean, the number one reason why our business fails is quite simply people. It's quite simply you have the wrong team. So, and when I say team, I rather refer to team than individual, because I think it's trying to build a business by yourself as a single founder is probably trying to take on Muhammad Ali with your one hand tied behind your back. It is extremely hard. So when we make investments, I'm not saying we haven't made an exception, but we do make sure that person is surrounded by C-suite executives that can handle everything that needs to be done in a startup. So number one is people. You just have to get the right people on the team. And the right people is the right marketing, sales, product development. So we invest in tech companies. So we like to have at least 2 founders. We like to have the builder, the guy that really is the engineer that knows how to build a shoe shine. Can build it unbelievably well, can make it 10x better than anything else on the market. And the other founder, which we call the marketing CEO, which is more the CEO I like, is the sales and marketing CEO. So I've often made a mistake where I've invested in engineering CEOs. And I'm not saying this is there's only one way, but typically I like to have an engineering CEO and a marketing CEO, the hustler. And typically the CEO is the hustler opposed to the engineer, because the engineer's strength is building tech. They love building tech. They want to get behind their computer and build tech. Sales is not in their DNA. So selling is probably the number 2 lesson is people can't sell, or they hire salespeople too quickly. So the salesman in the startup, and I'm talking about an early stage company now, I'm not talking about like we've got Ozo in our portfolio, which is doing tens and tens and tens of millions. It's very different there. But for a startup, the best salesperson in the startup is the founder. You can't hire a salesperson to have the passion and the vision and the unbelievable obsession about the product, obsession about the vision than the founder. So often founders make the mistake saying, I can hire a sales guy and they can go out there and make sales. For me, you have to get product market fit, and that's the go-to-market model. That's your sales model. That's your sales systems and processes. And typically the passion of the founder makes those initial 5, 10, 15 sales. Once you've got that and you've got product market fit and your business model and your go-to-market strategy is all fine, then it's the right time to hire a sales team. And definitely not a sales manager. I talk about a sales team. Because the sales manager who comes from IBM or Accenture, my place, are unfortunately trained with 100 people teams, and they've got all the processes and the systems, and they don't have that entrepreneurial agility that they need to actually make the sales. So for me, probably number 2 reason after team is they don't have the right sales team. And I think it's absolutely critical. For one, timing is everything in business, hiring the salespeople at the right time, and start out with hiring less experienced salespeople that you can teach them from the founder of how to sell. Once they've got this repeatable and sustainable business model, and you pay $100,000, you get $500,000 or $1 million back, you know you've got something repeatable. And that's the time I like to get involved as a venture capitalist, when you've got a repeatable and scalable sales model. So I've got many more reasons why businesses fail, and then the counter argument what entrepreneurs should do. But I'd say those are probably the most important two. And then I'll pass it back to you, Kashira.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Clive. And I'm sure both Will and Crispin will agree on the team thing. I think they both touched on that earlier. So, just going into the next portion. So once you establish a team, once you have some type of market validation, the issue then becomes product development. So I'd like to know, what is your advice on building a successful MVP and then actually moving beyond this? Maybe Crispin, Will, Clive, give me the down and dirty on this.
I'm happy to do that, but I'll leave it to Crispin and Will.
Well, maybe I can set the foundation. In that when we started our business, it was myself and my co-founder, so ticking some of the boxes for Clive already. And when we started trying to understand exactly what our product needed to look like, we didn't have any staff, and we wanted to build this ultimate tech platform that was going to enable what we wanted to do and to be able to scale the business to where we wanted it to get to. But before we could have 100% confidence in what we wanted to build, we set about for about 2 or 3 months manually running each operation and making the calls to our end users, trying to understand. So as an example, we wanted to list a property with somebody in Krugersdorp, and we'd phone them and say, hey there, we wanted to avoid sending a photographer because it was going to cost money. So we said, well, let's see if they can take photos themselves and submit them to us via WhatsApp. And if that worked, then we would build a product that would be able to reflect that component of what we were trying to do. And a lot of what we tried didn't work, and we would remove those as options. And then some things worked, and ultimately we've, 3.5 years down the line, continued this kind of iterative process under the hood, and have ultimately arrived at a product which we are beyond confident works. But there isn't a shortcut to that. And when we started the business, there weren't businesses like ours. Perhaps there was one other. And so there wasn't really even anyone to look to. And certainly in South Africa and Africa, where we're a unique landscape and a unique ecosystem, and to simply look abroad to the UK or to the US or to the East isn't always as simple here as well. So for us, it was incredibly important to go through an iterative component for almost everything we did to be able to ensure we were getting to an MVP that we could be confident in.
Awesome. Crispin, that makes so much sense, guys. There's a great saying in the Valley, which is do things that don't scale. And that's exactly what you did, guys. It's and what's so valuable about that is you're getting so much. You've obviously got this hypothesis around what product your customers need, and if you go out there and you actually test it on real life customers, you're going to get the feedback that you need. Maybe not the feedback you want, but definitely the feedback that you need. So that's brilliant. Early on when I got involved, I was told a saying: it's cheaper to throw away ideas than design and code. And that's quite an important thing to bear in mind, that if you want to avoid iterating where it's really expensive at the code part, and rather be testing ideas and design out, exactly as Crispin did. So that was flawless. Specifically on the MVP thing, I read something the other day which is really interesting from founders of SaaS companies, and it said your MVP should be a mafia offer. And the reason it's called a mafia offer is it's something your customers can't refuse because it's too good to pass up. And that is quite cool. You've really got to be so laser focused on solving one critical problem really well and not doing anything else. And they put it really well into context when they said, if there's nothing to distract your customers from seeing the value of the product, you've succeeded. So that's a lot harder to talk about than to do, but it's a really good example of how to be so focused when you're building your product. Again, talking to my world, I was a little bit tricky because if you think about it like an iceberg, people can only see above the water, but in a SaaS world, you've got to build this whole invisible mass of stuff below the water. So, that's always the challenge. It's a nice sort of moat that protects your business. It's a big sort of barrier to competition, but it's always the invisible pain, invisible features that you have to put up front. Another thing that I've picked up is being completely obsessive about running the ratio around customer around business value to tech complexity. So you've got all these things that you can build. How do you prioritize what's the most important thing to build? And it's by, as Crispin is, sitting really close to your customers, understanding what is their most valuable thing, and then having that relationship with the engineering part of the business where you can understand how complicated and long is it going to take to build that. And it gets really complicated because there's obviously all these dependencies that you've got to worry about. But if you remain really focused and precise on applying that ratio to anything you build, you're going to make sure that you're building the highest, the most important features in the right sequence. I think there was one last, the last point that I made is, again, talking to the SaaS world, is your minimum viable product comes a little bit later on in your product market fit life cycle than it does in your consumer customer. And that's also just something to be aware of. You're going to probably be punching yourself in the face in an enterprise SaaS world going, why is it taking me so long to get to this MVP? And it's just because it's a slightly different animal. Hopefully that's useful. Clive, I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I think just to add to what you both were saying, I think you both make resonate well. But one thing a mentor of mine taught me in Silicon Valley, it's not the minimum viable product, it's the minimum valuable product. And I think, and I've actually associated myself all the way since I learned this many, many years ago, it's about the valuable product opposed to the viable product. And I think, and the reason we say that is you have to make sure it adds value to your customers' lives. And often the minimum viable product, and I know viable might mean valuable, but I mean, it can't just be something that is nice, or it's nice to have, as someone said earlier, it's a vitamin, it's not a painkiller. So I think, how do you get to a minimum valuable product? You have to get out there and speak to your customers. Number one, because the throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what fits and then deciding that sticks, let me put that in the technology roadmap, is not the way to go. Because I think it's exactly what Crispin said. You're just going to start throwing things out the way. And that is valuable time and resources that you don't have. So if you create the minimum valuable product, it's going out to speak to customers, and not your mother, father, your uncle, your wife, your spouse, because they will tell you the things that you want to hear. And too many entrepreneurs say, I've spoken to them, they love it. So well, go and speak to people that are disinterested. They must be disinterested in your product. Go and speak to 100 people that are disinterested. If 90 say, that is a brilliant idea, I would do it, I would definitely do it. So for me, I'd rather any minimum valuable product, rather get it out sooner rather than later. Make it the bare bones, but get something out that adds value. Because so that's the pre-customer feedback, the pre-product market fit, and then the post-product market fit is when you get your customer feedback. So the pre-product market fit, get those disinterested people to say, wow, this is absolutely awesome. If I was in that industry, I'd buy it, or I will buy it, or it will definitely solve my problem. And the post-product market fit is to start understanding from your actual customers. Spend time with your actual customers. Don't worry about getting the next 10 customers. Rather worry about having 3 absolutely obsessed raving fan customers than having 10 or 20. The 1 or 2 or 3 are far more important, that they're obsessed about your product. You've done everything for them. You've solved all their problems, and they become your best salespeople. They'll give you references, and it's far better having 3 or 4 obsessed customers than having 20 okay customers. And too many businesses find, let me just get those 20 okay customers. Yes, they sell it, but the customer's not really interested. They're not engaged. They don't engage with the product. And the entrepreneur thinks, I've sold 20. I've now got product market fit. But they don't understand they haven't got product market fit because the customers are not engaging with their technology. The customers might be early adopters or evangelists and maybe take the technology. But the key thing is not about them taking their technology. It's about knowing how engaged they are on their technology. And what I mean by that is, do they use it every day? Facebook people use it 2, 3, 4 hours a day. That's engagement. You need engagement of your technology platform. And engagement implies it's solving a problem and you'll get more and more customers. Because I strongly believe if you get 1 or 2 or 3 customers, you can get 100. There's no reason. You've got that product, you've got product market fit, you've got that minimal valuable product, and then you can go on and get 100 customers. And maybe once you've got 5, 10, you can hire your sales team, and then you can scale very, very quickly. But you can't scale without the right people. And the other problem I see people make is and please no disrespect to any engineers on this call, but engineers are perfectionists. They want to build and build and build and build, and one more widget and one more widget and one more widget and one more widget. No, it's not perfect yet. And they let perfect get in the way of possible. And that is an absolute disaster for a startup. You cannot let perfect get in the way of possible. Just get a possible thing, get something that's not buggy, and get it out there. Get it out there, because else it becomes the best kept secret that no one knows about you. You've got to get your product out there. And yes, it might be slightly buggy, and you manage your expectations of people that might be slightly buggy, but get it out there. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. It just might have a couple of bugs, because you can't let perfect get in the way of possible. So engineers, listen, get it out there. Entrepreneurs will want, and marketing people want to get it out there as soon as possible. So there's a very positive tension, but you do need to get your product out there that it gets known in the marketplace. It cannot stay the best kept secret. And two people say to me, but Clive, it's not perfect. I can't release it. I said, well, then you're never going to release it. You've got to get the product out there that we can start building a brand, and you can start making sales. So that's my experience, not in prop tech, it's in every tech. And I see this everywhere in the world where I've worked, exactly the same problem. And typically coming from very, very deep tech engineers.
I think, Clive, just to add on to that, I think one of the challenges that we often face is that it's super easy to get distracted. You're spending all this time with your clients, and every client wants something, but what that client wants may be good for the business, but it may also not be good for the business. And so we spent a lot of time trying not to lose sight of what our end goals and our ambitions were. You know, our specifically for us, wanted to grow a data-driven ecosystem in the residential real estate space, to enable the ease with which one can transact. And if the requests and issues we were facing aligned with that, we would put time and energy into that. And if they didn't, then we would avoid doing that. And you want to do everything, but it's simply impossible to be able to pander to every request or look after every request, because you'll never reach your end goal.
But just to add to that, Crispin, one of the hardest things that I've learned as an entrepreneur building all those companies is learning how to say no. Because it's so hard saying no. You know, that you love that customer and they love you, and they just ask you very nicely, and the answer is yes, I'll build it. But what you're doing is you're building 55 versions for 55 clients, and that is not a scalable business. Not in the tech world. Definitely not in the tech world. So you have to learn to say no very nicely to your own company, to your employees, to your customers. Look here, if you're selling a SaaS product and you've got a 10,000 Rand a month customer, you're not going to go and change something for 10,000 Rand a month. If you've got Salesforce.com as a customer, or you've got that sort of thing, and it's a $500,000 to $1 million Rand monthly MRR, that's where I would listen to and make changes for that customer, because that is a huge customer, and that's what you want to try and get. So you got to look at, if you are in a SaaS type business or any technology business, if you've got a huge customer that's going to change your business, that you maybe take a slightly different decision. But for a small amount of revenue month, you've got to learn just to say no.
Mm. Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
Well, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think to brilliant points. Clive, just some pushback, if I may, to use your word there, with your phrase, positive tension here. One thing that we certainly did, a mistake we made, was going to market too early with a product that aimed at enterprise customers. And oftentimes the really strong advice coming from the Valley is focused at the most common tech solution, which is your B2C product, where your B2C customer is a bit more forgiving. I would just certainly say you've got to find that fine balance between having a product that's got bugs and iterating through your product with customers. You're actually using it to feed their children. And having a product that's maybe too mature, where you've maybe gone too far down the road and built things that customer feedback earlier would have helped you to pivot. So guys, the general advice is get out there, ship early, and be embarrassed by the first product that you've got. But it's a slight tweak, because I understand it, and I'm open to pushback, Clive. When it comes to business customers, you're certainly less forgiving and demand a higher level of quality from certainly a more complicated product. That's got more things that could potentially go wrong. Thoughts, Clive? You're going to want to unmute.
Clive, we still can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. So what Reid Hoffman says, if you deliver a system that hasn't got bugs, you've waited too late. And I agree with him 100%. I'm not saying deliver something that doesn't work, because you're only going to destroy your brand. Deliver something that you can work closely with your customers in refining it, getting rid of the bugs, and actually adding solutions to it. And we don't actually invest, bar the one investment, we don't invest in B2C because of the marketing cost to build a B2C business. In Africa, it's just too hard to build a B2C, but it's too expensive. The cost of marketing to build a B2C business, it comes like a Ponzi scheme. You put in 10 million, you get 50 million out. Then your customers just disappear. You put in 10 million. I'm not saying it, but if you've got big markets like the US and Europe and Asia, you can build a B2C business. So we're not into B2C businesses. We prefer B2B, where you can sit with your customers and you can understand their pain points. You can really, solve that scratch that they've got with the issue that they've got with the scratch, and you can solve their pain points. So in B2B is different to B2C. I mean, there's no question about that. But B2B, it must be something that works, but understand that if you're gonna release it quick enough, like Reid Hoffman says, it will still potentially be buggy, but you've got to manage your clients' expectations, because it doesn't matter how much you do. I'm a computer science graduate. I've written much code myself, and I know you can't. You just never get. It's not a destination. You just have to keep it going. So not a buggy system, but not a system that you release 3-6 months later, where it's an 80-20 rule. You could get 80%. Your 80% of the bugs are out. Got to just find that it's a good balance you've got to find. I'm not saying there's no balance.
Awesome. I hear you.
If we can move on to the next question, and then I'll hand over to you guys again. So I'm going to split this question in two. So one being the entrepreneur perspective, and then Clive, I'd like you to hop on the investor perspective. So what is the secret to scaling? Will Crispin, your experience in actually scaling a business, once you have that MVP, how do you actually grow a business? And then Clive, if you can comment on this from an investor perspective. So how would you know that a company has the potential to scale, and how do you guys at Kaylon actually evaluate this? Will and Crispin, you guys go first, and then Clive will take the investor question.
Okay. So scaling is hard. It is one of the hardest things that we've had to face. And I think it's been mentioned a few times this morning, but I've grown this massive appreciation for HR. It's something that a startup can't really afford, an HR department, but it's something that a startup and a young business really, really needs. You don't have a ton of money to spend on all the staff in the world. And I think I'd like to add to that, don't overhire when you're a small and young business. But the reality is that while tech enables you to scale, it isn't the result. It isn't the answer to scaling. And I think we feel that having the right team to drive that scale is incredibly important. And so we went through a bit of an evolution on that. And I think what we've realized is that spending a little bit more on less, having an incredible team that you can surround yourself with people that kind of know a lot more than you do in their specific areas. So whether it's on the digital side or whether it's on the sales side or whatever it is, the guys that have formed part of our team all know infinitely more than I do around what they do. But they don't have the sort of line of sight as to the runway or at least the journey that the business has been on. And I think when you combine those two, it sets you up really nicely to be able to scale your business. And then you can rely on other people who are really good at what they do to scale. And then to couple that on with an effective product development strategy to be able to then translate all of those learnings and all that expertise into a usable product that you can enable that scale with is the way we've managed to do it. And you could talk for hours on it, on what worked and what didn't work. And it's always easier to talk about what doesn't work. And I think what we found is building a tech product that you hope is going to scale your business through and through and through in South Africa and certainly in Africa is really difficult to just get right off the bat. And I think it's a process, and I think that relies heavily on a powerful and effective team of individuals. Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Crispin. You really, I think, just echoing Clive's thoughts there. I think it's going to be a common theme running through the session is in these businesses, which are these are knowledge worker businesses, these are fourth industrial revolution businesses. It's all about what's happening here in the minds of your people. And yeah, the better your team, the better your business. I think to my take on it, it's kind of like a don't do, is that the big advice is don't scale prematurely, and understand clearly the steps. And there's a bright chap broken down your process to repeatable and scalable growth into 11 steps. And his big thing is don't skip a step. It's fatal. And if you have enough money, you can go back and repeat that step. But if you move too quickly into sales, and as Clive alluded to earlier, hiring up a massive sales team when you haven't solved for product market fit, you're going to be dead in the water. So that's my short bit of feedback here is just be really, really disciplined, solve for product market fit, search for the repeatable and scalable and profitable growth model, and then move into that sort of phase that they call blitz scaling, where you really turn on the engines and go aggressively after your total addressable markets.
And Clive, just to jump in before you round it off from your perspective, I think just to add is that it would have been too slow for us as a business to scale simply organically, and the relationships that we have developed, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, is through investors and investor support and the synergies that come with that by being able to benefit from the advisory that they have and all the experience and the HR and the accounts support and that sort of stuff. All those things are incredibly important to be able to support effective growth. And I think if we look back and try to do that without having the support through investors and what they bring to the table, it would have taken us longer. And I think we don't need to harp on about how expensive time is in the space when you're trying to grow a business. So that was a really important thing, and perhaps certainly Clive, you could probably talk better to that.
Yeah, thanks, Crispin. So, I mean, we look at many things, but let me talk about. So the question was, I think, is what does a venture capitalist look for before they make an investment? So at Kalon Venture Partners, I mean, we've got 8 companies we've invested in, including the one we're signing today, and we should have 10 in the next 1 or 2 months. We're quite close to due diligence on a number of other companies, but it's very much, I call it the 5 T's, or so we just start out with the first T, simple. We've discussed that at Infinitum as team. So you've got to have the right team, and the team is not just. I like to see someone in the team that's built a business before. It might just be an advisor. It might be someone, preferably someone in the team, someone that's either CEO or the CTO or the CEO, someone in the team that's built a business, because you get that pattern recognition when you build businesses. You get the playbook, and there's so much that you don't. We don't want to pay the school fees of the investing companies. So that's why we get involved. We hope they've got people that can do this, and we don't have to pay the school fees. So number 1 is team. Number 2 is the technology. So we want innovation-led technologies. That's the type of technology and I think you were saying it, Will, earlier, that it's not working in a market, it's creating a new market. It's not deciding on a business within a box, it's losing the box. And actually coming up with something that's so innovative that it's actually creating a new category in the marketplace. A category that can be well explained and the education can take place, because that also could be very expensive. So number 2 is the technology. Remembering, we look at a 10x return on our capital. So if we make an investment and we don't see a 10x return on our capital, if we put in $15 million, which is our average check size, and we don't see in 5 to 7 years that could be $150 million based on the equity ownership, etc., we won't make that investment. Now, of course, you don't always know. You want to shoot it out the park every single time, but we aim for the stars, and maybe we only hit the moon. So number 2 is that very innovative tech. Number 3, as per mentioned already, is traction. We want to see that, and not necessarily, because we invest in 2 stages. We invest in early stage companies. We do a couple of early stage where they've got a little bit of traction, but most of our investments are in growth capitals. It's where product market fit is already there. You're doing $500,000, $1 million a month, and we just invest in putting more fuel on the fire. We help you do that. We open up our channels. We help you go offshore. We help take the IP offshore, and we really help scaling this business to another level. So that's the 3rd T, which is traction, which is critical. That it's shown that the dogs are eating the dog food. You're selling dog food, the dogs are eating the dog food, and the market, you're solving a real pain, and not, as I think Will said earlier, you're solving it's an aspirin for a painkiller. It's not a vitamin for a nice to have. It's a need to have. The 4th T is the tenacity of the entrepreneur. I want to see entrepreneurs that are so tenacious, that are obsessed about this business. They're obsessed about the vision. They're obsessed about the technology. They're obsessed about changing the world. Because if they're not, at some point it's going to get so hard, because it's so hard to build a business. They're going to wake up one morning and just say, it's not worth it. I'm going back to my bank to work in my corporate place anymore. So entrepreneur DNA and culture is fundamentally different to one that sits in a corporate. I'm not saying you can't adapt as a corporate to an entrepreneur, But there's some people that just cannot work in corporates because they hate rules. They hate following the rules. I mean, I'm one of them that was just always pushing the boundaries, always doing things that are never breaking the law, but breaking the rules, because it actually helped our clients and helped us make more money. You know, they said to me, do ABC, I did ABC to Z. If they said to me, come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, I came in at 6 o'clock in the morning. And this is what I want from an entrepreneur. They're always on. They switched on all the time. But they've got to be also leaders, and they've got to be able to move from being an entrepreneur to being a leader as you scale. Because it's easy being an entrepreneur, but as you scale a business to 30, 50, 100, 200 people, you've actually got to move from being an entrepreneur to being a leader of people. You've got to get work done through others. So I want to see from the reference checks we do that someone in that team has got that experience of moving from being an entrepreneur to being a leader. I mean, then the next one is terms. You know, valuation is very, very important to both parties. Obviously, you always got this good tension. The entrepreneur wants a 200 million, and you think it's worth 20 million, because they've been to Silicon Valley yesterday and they heard they're worth $50 million, and they've got one customer and they're doing 10,000 rand a month. And you've got to find that terms that actually satisfy both of you. That's fair to both of you. And when I say terms, valuation, terms, the whole term sheet, everything about that has got to be fair. So those are the five T's that we look for. And sorry, the other one I forgot about. Sorry, the 6 T's, target addressable market. So you've got to be in a big target addressable market. In Africa, maybe $100 million, a minimum $100 million, or even bigger, that you're going to take a percentage share of that. But globally, there's a very, very large target addressable market. We're just closing a deal today for a company called CarScan. Now, CarScan is a company that's quite unique. They do, they take pictures. So when you go to an insurance for bumps and that, normally what you have to do is you have to go to 3 panel beaters. You get 3 quotes. And that's very, very corrupt industry. They just give you, well, you go to one panel beater, they give you 3 quotes from 3 different companies. It takes forever. It's not COVID friendly. So all they do is they use augmented reality and 360 degrees. They take the picture of the car. They take a picture of every single dent and bump on the car using this augmented reality, not just using a picture like some of the insurance companies use. They send it directly to, if you're in Hyde Park, they send it to 3 panel beaters that are close where I live. And immediately, within 15 minutes, you've got the quotes. The insurance company's got the quotes, and they've given the work out. Something that took weeks before is now taking minutes. It's going into all the motor industry. They want to use this because also even rental car industries. Now you can see this type of thing. In the rental car industry, one of the biggest problems is if you come back to your car and they say you've dented the car, you say, no way, it was there before the car went out. So they use CarScan, and you can't, it's either was on there or not, because CarScan will do a comparison and say, no, that dent, that little dent there was on the car already, or it wasn't on the car already. So you can just see this is very innovative, and the target addressable market in the automotive sector is absolutely huge. So we're really getting into most of the major automotive companies in South Africa, interest out of India, interest out of many parts of the world. So that's the type of tech, the deep tech. And it's not always deep tech, but we often look for the deep tech in making these investments, because these are not things that are in, we're creating new markets opposed to just competing for market share.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Clive. So just for some closing remarks, and then we're going to head on over to our Q&A session. Is there any other thoughts, Crispin, Will, Clive, that you'd like to share just to close up the session before I start? You know, we've got a couple of questions that have come through, and then I'll just read those out and you guys can answer them.
I'll just add a very quick point. What I've seen from entrepreneurs is who raise venture capital, they think that's that they now can celebrate, and now it's time for big celebration because you've raised 50 million rand or $5 million or whatever it might be. What they don't understand, there's no reason for celebration. The hard work starts once you raise venture capital. And also, once you raise venture capital, understand you are giving up the rights to your business. Once you take outside capital, that business is not yours anymore. Someone else is going to make decisions which you are not going to like. So pick your venture capitalist or pick your investor very, very carefully, because it's like a spouse, it's like a marriage partner, in all honesty. And just that point is capital doesn't validate your business model. People think capital validates what they've got. Only customers validate your business model. So that's how I want to close. People just think that celebrate, I've raised capital. It's the start of a long journey ahead of you by the fact that you've raised capital. Well done, but set it aside and start the hard work.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think it's when we raised capital for the first time, I remember thinking I was going to be incredibly relieved, and finally I could have a good night's sleep. And And the reality was that it was really just the transference of stress from not knowing where you're going to pay your salaries the month before to now needing to be accountable to your team as you always were, but then also your new partners, and understanding what their expectations were. And I think I can never ever talk about how important it is about that courtship period of going out and meeting all your potential investors. And it's a tough position if a young business ever gets into a backs against the wall where they need to accept an offer, because I think all great startups deserve, and I suppose investors deserve, the time to be able to get to know each other, to know whether they're going to be able to walk the road together, because you can't do it on your own, and you're going to need each other. And there are most certainly going to be difficult times, and you're going to rely on each other in those times. So absolutely couldn't agree more. The stress doesn't get less. I think it just becomes something else. But also, so does every moment of excitement get a little bit better, because it's a little bit bigger, a little bit more successful. And I think it's a really great part of the journey in the process. Will, over to you.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, it's a bit challenging in the SaaS space, certainly in South Africa, because you don't have those. What SaaS investors look for is a proven team that's done it before, and obviously they look for another thing too, and obviously a market that and an opportunity that they really love. And the challenge is those two things, just because of where we are in this country, don't exist. So we've sort of done it the hard way, where we've bootstrapped to a large extent with some external funding. So guys, I don't really have too much to add. I'm very much listening and hearing the good advice here. We've just been very fortunate that we've been able to do it. As I think Clive says, you've got to have the 3 T's, and if you don't have the passion and you don't have the tenacity, you're going to be dead in the water. And I think it talks to sort of what are you doing it for? If people are coming into this game, into PropTech, just looking to make quick money because they've seen it hard works in Facebook, that's not the case. You've got to have a real, you've got to be a missionary as opposed to a mercenary, and that's what's going to carry you through the tough times. You've got to actually be doing this for a bigger reason than just trying to make a little bit of money and flip and go and spend the rest of your life living in Monaco. It's not going to carry you through the tough times.
Can I just add to what the guys are saying quickly? You know, I always, when I meet with people and I look at it, it's in my head, but not necessarily saying it. But what I'm actually saying to myself is there's 5 reasons why, major reasons in my opinion, why businesses fail. There's 100, but I've slipped it down to 5. We've spoken about the team. You've got the wrong team that you're going to fail. Company culture is absolutely critical when you're a startup. So you haven't got the right company culture. I'm not going to go into the details. You don't have the right go-to-market strategy. You're just trying everything and you don't have a go-to-market strategy. Then you ask financials. What financials? You don't understand your financials. Typically, like you always saying in a SaaS business, you've got to understand your economic churn. You've got to understand your churn rate. You have got to understand so many indicators to build a MRR, ARR. Are you losing the right type of customers, etc., etc. But the last point I want to make is all of those things. You can work out the team. You can fix the culture. You can fix up your go-to-market strategy. You can find someone to fix up your financials. But what you can't fix is if you pick the wrong investor. If you've got the wrong investor, I'm telling you, your business is going to be in trouble from day one. They want to go north. You want to go south. You're disaligned. You want to get to an exit, and they're saying, I want to sell. You saying you're still going to build this business, etc., etc. So please take your time. They're going to do, and I'm going to do a due diligence on you, do a due diligence on me and every single investor, because I'm telling you, if you get it wrong, it's like a bad marriage. It's a very bad ending.
I agree with that completely, Clive. And, you know, investors do have a very important responsibility, but at the same time, role in which they play in the business. And I also think there needs to be a very good relationship between founders and investors. There needs to be that synergistic type of relationship. Okay, so we've got a question that's come through, and it's a question for all panelists. So the question is, how important are corporate partnerships when developing a product and creating scale? And what partnership models are being used in your current businesses right now?
Okay, maybe I'll start with our example. So when we looked for a partnership, initially an investor partnership, we went to I don't know, we just thought everyone's going to VCs, let's go to VCs. So we did that. And a small caveat here is that when we started pitching for business, none of us knew how to do that either. I mean, we've been through varsity, we've been through an MBA, but now you sit in front of an exco of VCs, or you sit in front of an exco of corporate, and you now have to pitch your big business concept, and they start asking the questions from their perspective. It's an environment that I'd never been in, and it was a lot more intense in the first 2 or 3. It's a bit like speed dating. You go through 1, 2, or 3 of nerves, and then you start getting a little bit better, and you start anticipating questions. So I guess the one thing is, and this is a little bit of an aside, if you are starting to raise capital, go through 2 or 3 before you get to the ones that you like, because you're going to be a lot more comfortable and a lot more convincing. But ultimately, we ended up with a corporate partner in our business, and we were nervous about it because with corporates come systems and processes designed for big corporates, and when you want an approval somewhere, it needs to go away for 2 or 3 weeks. It needs to be presented to other excos. They need to decide whether this is a good idea, and oftentimes these excos don't have line of sight to these investments, so they see a bottom line, and we all know that while the bottom line is what makes or breaks a business, at the end of the day, context is really important, and I think having that in a partner is it's a non-negotiable in my view. But we managed to navigate these, and as soon as you understand that these are going to be challenges in that relationship, then being able to pull the benefits out of that corporate partnership is incredibly important. Not only is it the synergies we spoke about earlier, but it's being able to have that bounce, that springboard of testing tech solutions that they've tested that might work, getting cost benefits from their relationships that they have, being able to test against their clients, being able to, there are just thousands and thousands of opportunities, and these are as many as you can manage to get to as a startup or a prop tech business, and that all of these help to be able to determine your success and get your success a lot faster. So I would be after 3 years of experiencing it, I would say it's incredibly important if you can find a relationship, and if you have a good enough relationship that you can pull out those kinds of benefits.
Thank you, Crispin. Guys, yeah, my experience around corporate partnerships I've been very blessed to have very wonderful experiences with businesses in the commercial property space in South Africa. Just a bit of the background, you've got this product backlog, all these features you want to build, and what these guys can do is they'll pay you money to get the features that they want moved earlier up in the product backlog. You've obviously got to be solving a real pain, and you obviously, and the challenge is you've got to build that invisible bunch of features first, so you can give them impactful features that they're going to need. That's something a corporate's not going to want to ever do unless you get spectacularly lucky, is be prepared to invest in allowing you to build your invisible iceberg where they're not really going to get a return on the money that they're spending. They're not going to get any obvious benefits because you're building your server environment, you're building permissions engines, you're building all these hidden things which they won't appreciate. So if handled correctly, corporate partnerships can be really positive. What you do need to be very clear about is communication at all times. You certainly don't want to get into a situation where there's expectation gaps, and the benefits for the corporates are significant. They get the features they want at fairly low risk and way lower cost than if they were to do it internally. Crispin alluded to the fact that a corporate is a slightly different organization to a tech startup. Tech startups are very agile, they move fast, they make decisions really quickly, and that's a great ally for a corporate. Secondly, once that product is built, and again, it's about having a very, that feature is built, it's about having a very honest relationship with your potential corporates. You can then potentially go and sell that same product, provided it's part of your core product, and you shouldn't be building features which aren't part of your core product, by the way. Clive spoke about it earlier. You end up putting yourself into a really horrible place where you're maintaining a whole bunch of fringe features, which can kill you as a business. So you want to have that conversation that they are aware that that feature will be used by their competitors. But the beauty for the corporate is they're not going to pay for the maintenance, which is actually a big cost in SaaS, and they're going to be assured of a lower price point for that particular product or for that particular feature going forward. So that's if you can get those things right, there's a lot of opportunity for corporates to work with with tech startups, provided obviously you bought the invisible stuff, which they're never going to want to pay for, and it's going to be hard conversations to have.
So I'm going to take a contrarian view here, because I've had the good, the bad, and the ugly experiences from my many years of building, whether it's a SaaS business, whether it's a marketplace, whether it's just a B2B business, whether it's a B2B2C business. We've created many partnerships, and I'll tell you, if you can create a partnership, and I've followed Crispin, and I think Crispin is a real icon, I think, for people to follow of a corporate relationship that can actually work. Because I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you guys, I'll just give you an actual situation. If you look at Waze in the US, Google bought Waze, and Google did not bring Waze into the mothership. They put Waze on the side of the mothership. Waze was left to do its own thing, its own income statement, balance sheet, and it's been an unbelievable success. And that's how these businesses do it. So if you listen to the guys from Singularity University, and I follow these guys very closely, what they talk about is when you go into a corporate, the immune system comes out. If you've got a product that's potentially is going to disintermediate or potentially is going to impact someone's P&L, the immune system comes out and they just push the antibodies come out and they push this new technology out of the way. And this is I've seen too often, unfortunately, because no one is actually held accountable for the delivery of that product. And I don't want to generalize out, because obviously there's exceptions. We have had good experiences where it's someone is very senior in the organization, which is a sponsor, and their P&L is not worrying about that banking, your loans, how many you get. Their P&L is measured on how well this company does. And if you can do that without them being shifted into different roles, because that's always the risk, they get shifted, you get a new guy, and the new guy or girl is not interested. But if you can get the right sponsor in a corporate, so they maybe make an investment, that's nothing, that's not important. It's the sponsor that's going to help you and take it to all their customers. If it's a bank, they've got 10 million customers. How do you get it to that 10 million customers? What I caution any entrepreneurs, because you've got a channel like a bank or a telco, and into Africa where they've got tens or 20 or 100, 200, 300 million, that it's going to work. We got many years ago a great company of ours. It really was great tech, very innovative, a great huge market. We got into the exclusive agreement, SaaS-based business with one of the telcos in South Africa. There was a change in sponsor, and they put it on the shelf, and they never did one thing about it. And we had signed exclusivity. So they wanted to uphold the exclusivity, but they didn't do anything about the tech. And we had spent multi-million rands getting the tech ready to roll out to their 40 countries in Africa. So, I'll tell you, I've got some really, unfortunately, to make it work, I think it's fantastic. If you can make it work, you can scale. You talk about blitz scaling. You can really scale your business unbelievably. But don't be naive or ignorant saying, I've got this partnership, it's now going to work. You've got to nurse it. What I propose to everyone is hire someone and put one of your people on their seats. So you should have your person working with whoever's their sponsor, working every single day, building the relationship, because you might call them an investor, but I call them a customer. If you can treat them like a customer, you can really help scale your business significantly. But I don't believe Crispin's experience, unfortunately, and I'm not going to give examples of companies and corporates because I've got them in my head. I've seen more horror endings than good ones. But if you can make it work, it can turn your business around completely.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Clive. Unfortunately, we're out of time, guys, but thank you so much, everyone, for making the time, and thanks for everyone who's tuned in today. We hope you enjoyed the panel, and if you guys do have any further questions, please reach out to any one of the panelists today. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kashira.